Hello, Brian Miller-Hicks here, a continuing series of PowerPoints on topics of geology. This is one of my favorite topics, fossils. And I have found by browsing the internet and talking to people that fossils are among one of the favorite geologic subjects of many, many people. A lot of people show pictures of what they think is a fossil online. Sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not. Fossil, of course, is the evidence of past life. It can be an actual part of an animal, like a shell or a bone, or it can be the trace of an animal, evidence that the animal once existed by by virtue of fossilized tunnels, burrows, imprints, footprints, and evidence like that. So let's get started. This is a beautiful section of an ancient seafloor showing the preserved shells of ammonites, ancient ammonites, I think Cretaceous in age, 60 million years ago, that lived in the ocean, died, fell to the ocean floor, and were fossilized through time by processes that I will explain and as we go forward. So fossils were and are very, very critical, crucial tools for geologists trying to figure out relative ages of rock layers, mostly sedimentary layers. Fossils, of course, are rarely found in igneous rock because of the high temperature formation, and they are sometimes found in metamorphic rock, although most of the time they're distorted by the processes of metamorphism, warped and stretched and crushed or squeezed by metamorphism, but mostly they're found in sedimentary rocks. The concept of fossils representing different species of animals and plants through time helped geologists construct what we know of as the geologic time scale. Here you see Precambrian. We think the Earth's age is about 4.6 billion years. So starting here at the beginning of Earth's life and progressing through time until we reach present day. And we can see through this chart that different life forms, different forms of animals showed up at different times during the geologic time scale. By looking at the assemblage of animals and plants in certain layers, geologists could correlate layers with each other, even though they may have been miles separated. And they could see a sequence of the evolution of life. For example, one species of, or I should say, a group of animals called trilobites were very common during the Cambrian periods of time, some 500 million years ago. But then they died out. So if you see none of these fossils in your rock layer that you're looking at, chances are that rock layer, if it was a marine sediment, is younger than the Cambrian period. So fossils are used for dating rocks relatively speaking through relative age techniques. And one of the pioneers, one man who first recognized the usefulness of fossils in rock strata dating and correlation, was a gentleman named William Smith. Mr. Smith produced one of the first detailed geologic maps, which I'll show you in a minute, of England. Mr. Smith was an English surveyor. He observed and recorded rock layers in coal mines and later in strata exposed by canal excavations. So he was an engineer, surveyor, and spent a lot of time observing rock strata and trying to determine why they were the way they were, why they occurred in sequences which had certain sequences of different types of animals in different positions of the rock layers. Okay, so various strata in the same position, in some positions relative to each other, could be correlated to rocks in the same positions in other regions or locales in England. Each stratum could be identified and correlated according to the fossils within it. So he took samples, he mapped strata, he found that older strata near the bottom of the stack of strata as you go up towards present ground surface, the older strata will be near the bottom. Older strata contain fossils that were very different from the evidence of animal life later on and existing in present day or modern times. That helped, all that categorization and correlation and mapping helped give rise to evolutionary theory. Darwin hadn't developed his ideas yet, but he was aware of Mr. Smith's work among work by other geologists. And in fact, Smith wasn't the first one to recognize the possible importance of fossils in relationship to environments and the occurrence of fossils where they did occur. For example, Leonardo da Vinci, I believe in the 16th century, saw fossils on high mountain tops, mountain ranges in his native Italy, and he surmised that these rock strata were formed at the bottom of oceans, and somehow, he didn't know how, found their way to the tops of mountains. So the ideas were developing. So here is Mr. Smith's geologic map, a portion of his geologic map of England, which is actually pretty accurate. You have to give a lot of credit to Mr. Smith for compiling this work product. He published this map in about year 1815. Because of his work, he was known as Strata Smith as a nickname. Again, he recognized that certain fossils show up in certain strata, the concept of geologic correlation by identifying fossils, correlation of place, environment, and time. Now, each rock layer represents its formation, its environment and formation. A limestone was formed in ocean waters, sometimes deep ocean waters or semi-shallow ocean waters. A sandstone may have formed on an ancient beach environment and become buried and consolidated through time. A mudstone, present-day mudstone, may have formed as a mud in a lagoonal or quiet water environment. And each one of those layers had distinct types of fossils and evidence of animal life embedded within it. Again, to reiterate, Mr. Smith observed the regularity of strata, the consistent of order or stacking of strata, the assemblages of fossils. Fossils allowed for distinguishing strata one from the other and allowed for correlation of strata that are separated by distance. So he put it all together in a practical map, linking the rock strata to their fossil assemblages, and also provided a lot of very valuable information for resources. We're looking for coal deposits and other valuable resources of the time. He was able to put all that on a map. Now geologists since Smith's time have, of course, refined their ideas of what a fossil means in terms of relative age, in terms of environment, manner of deposition, and so forth. All the fossils that we have discovered on this planet through time that have been identified and associated with certain age rocks and certain locations of rocks, all put together comprise what we call the fossil record. Now, the fossil record is not complete. It's not perfect. Not every rock is available for examination. No human being has seen every rock in existence as well. Not all forms of life have been preserved. Soft-bodied fossils are rare. Most fossils that we find are because they had bones or shells or something hard that has been preserved through time. Erosion, of course, stripping away layers of rock through time, and metamorphism, changing of rocks through heat and pressure, has destroyed a lot of fossils as well. So let's go back in time to the early Earth. When did life first appear, according to what we found in the fossil record? So we have found fossils of bacteria as old as 3.7 billion years, one-cell creatures. And bacteria fossils are very rare because, of course, they're soft-bodied and they're found only under very limited conditions. 2.5 billion years ago, we have fossils that old, fossils of algae and plankton. Excuse me, about 1.5 billion years ago, fungi and invertebrates started showing up. Then 540 million years ago, we start seeing shelled invertebrates. 540 million years ago is kind of a landmark in the geologic time scale. That's what we call the beginning of the Cambrian explosion, wherein we find a whole huge complex range of shelled invertebrates like clams, oysters, trilobites, and so forth. And so we have a very good fossil record of those life forms. Here's the geologic time scale again. Here's the Cambrian explosion, 540 million years ago, when the first hard shell fossil animals could be found, leaving their fossils behind. Then we go through fishes and dinosaurs and more modern animals until we arrive at human beings some 100,000 years or more or so ago. So let me try to demonstrate how fossils are used to give us a relative age of a rock layer. So here's a blue layer and here's a red layer. Now here's age ranges of some fossil groups. You'll see that this animal that produced this fossil shell lived a long time span. So if we were to find this fossil in a rock layer, we wouldn't know whether the rock layer was this old down here or, excuse me, let me back up a little bit. If we found this fossil, since it lived through a long span of time from old to young, It's not particularly useful in pinning down the relative age of a layer of rock in which it's found because of its long time span. So we're trying to narrow it down. Let's try to find the relative age of the blue layer. We find that, okay, this fossil is present in the blue layer, but so is this fossil, so is this fossil, so is this fossil, but this fossil, this dinosaur skull, was not present. So we know the layer is older than the age of dinosaurs. So we begin to narrow down the relative ages of rock layers by virtue of this method of using lifespans of a species to get a relatively narrow range of time wherein we can pin down the age of a rock layer. Now, what types of fossils do we find? We find that fossils are preserved only under certain conditions. And an anoxic environment is an environment with low oxidation, low oxygen activity, low chemical activity, no scavengers, low bacterial activity. That's favorable to the preservation of a fossil. Quick burial. We want a quick burial so the tissue and other parts cannot dissolve or get lost right away, and they're quickly buried and preserved. Hard parts, of course, are always useful. We don't want this fossil to have undergone metamorphism and ended up in a metamorphic rock where its form, shape, and identity is distorted. We realize that most soft tissues decompose through time. So it's rare to find soft tissues in very old fossils, but some fairly recent fossils have been found where soft tissue has been preserved. I'll show you a couple examples in a little bit. And a process of fossil preservation that we call permineralization, replacement by minerals dissolved in water. This is especially applicable to the preservation of trees and plants, where the woody tissue or fibrous tissue of a plant is replaced by minerals like quartz, silica, by water carrying these minerals. And as the woody tissue dissolves or decays, it's replaced by this mineralized water, which leaves the minerals behind. And the actual structure of the tree, for example, is beautifully preserved. And I'll show you a couple fossil trees. Here's some fossil hunters. This is in the year 1914, and you can imagine that this is pretty interesting work, digging up old bones. This is the famous La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles. If you get a chance to go up and look at this site, it's very interesting. The tar pits are still there, and there's museums and other exhibits around it. This is kind of a strange fossil preservation environment. These are actual pits of tar, liquid asphalt type material, which trapped animals. When water collected on top of this tar deposit, it looked like a little lake or a pond. Animals would go in to try to drink water. Then they'd get stuck in the tar. They couldn't escape, and they died, and they were sunk down into the material, and layer upon layer, hundreds, if not thousands, of bones and other fragments of fossils, including pollens and plant parts, have been found in these tar pits. Here is a fossil hunter. I'm not sure if that's Dr. Grant from Jurassic Park. Kind of looks like him. It's a dinosaur fossil that he's chipping out of the hard sedimentary rock. This is in Colorado. You see this as a large bone. Large bones, like as is shown here and depicted in the previous slide, are megafossils, very visible to the eye, as opposed to microfossils, which we can see here. These are 96 million year old fossil pollens, so dating back to the Cretaceous. So these are microfossils. They're very, very tiny. Pollens, fossil pollens are quite important in giving us a more refined idea of certain environments of the layers in which they're preserved. Certain types of pollen come from certain types of plants, which lived only in certain types of environmental conditions, dry conditions, wet conditions, high elevation, low elevation. So they give us a really good clue as to the type of environment of the rock within which they're embedded has been deposited. Here's another megafossil. This is the famous trilobite, which came into existence during the Cambrian. There are many, many species of trilobites, and there's many well-preserved fossils because they had a hard, segmented shell-like structure covering themselves. So this is the fossil mold and the cast of a trilobite. Here, this is not the original tissue of the trilobite. This is what I mean by replacement of original organic tissue, whether it's bone or shell, by minerals. In some cases, you can find beautiful fossil trilobites and other organisms like ammonites having been replaced completely by mineralized agate of many different colors, or even in some cases pyrite, which is iron sulfide. Beautiful fossils. Here are fossil cephalopods, little swirly snail shell type structures that belong to a group of animals called ammonites. Here are shark teeth. Now, shark teeth are a lot of fun to find. These are fossil shark teeth from Australia. Now, shark teeth, unlike our teeth are bone. Shark teeth are not bone, they're cartilage. They're very hardened cartilage, but they're quite durable material and are very well preserved as fossils. Now here we come into more the realm of trace fossils, or evidence that animals existed, and the fossils are not necessarily the hard parts like shells and bones. These are imprints of fish in the fine-grained lake sediments of the Eocene Green River Formation in the USA. So these are not the actual bones, but they're the remnants of the original organic carbon that made up the bones of the fish, and as well as some of the tissue of the fish, as seen here in these fossil fin imprints. Beautiful fossils preserving much of the structure of the original fish. Now here's my Jurassic Park reference again. This is the famous mosquito or insect preserved in amber scenario that was used in that movie or series of movies. Ancient insects preserved in amber. So far, sadly, nobody's actually been able to resurrect dinosaurs by withdrawing DNA from the blood contained within these insects. May happen, though. Another megafossil, Tyrannosaurus rex. Everybody knows what a Tyrannosaurus rex or T-Rex is. One of the biggest, fiercest, most feared predators of Cretaceous time, not Jurassic time. This, of course, is a megafossil. It's easily visible. One interesting aside I've found out from some of my reading is that Dinosaur fossils may have been found by ancient peoples, say the Romans, the Babylonians, the Greeks, and the discovery of these ancient skulls and bones may have led to the development of the myths and legends of dragons. Maybe. It's interesting to think about. Here's Liuba, baby mammoth. Poor thing, was only a month old when she died. The fossil itself is 42,000 years old, so pretty recent. She was found in a bog in Siberia. Permafrost up there is starting to melt away, so she was extracted from the bog in which she probably fell into and died. But her skin, her hair, her toenails, her internal organs are quite well preserved. So that's what, here's an example of soft tissue preservation that I mentioned before. Here's petrified wood. If you go to Arizona, stop by Petrified Forest. I think it's a national park or national monument, and look at the petrified wood logs. These, of course, are sections of old trees that have been permineralized. All the woody tissue has been replaced by minerals, mainly quartz. Here is another carbonized fossil. This is a fossil B, the imprint of the original organic carbon on the sediment. Here's another trace fossil. No body part, no shell, no bone, no carbonized imprint. This is just the preserved tunnel network excavated by ancient worms. And this is what you see as the cast of these burrows preserved in sandstone, probably a near shore or near beach type environment. This is a very interesting fossil. Remember when I said that organisms with soft tissues don't get fossilized as easily or as readily as animals with hard parts? So this is a soft-bodied marine worm impression, again, what's left of the organic carbon, in the Burgess Shale. The Burgess Shale is extremely famous. It's up in Canada. It has a whole suite of fossils of soft-bodied organisms. Without these discoveries, we would not even have known these soft-bodied animals existed. They're a whole range of different types of animals which don't exist anymore, but they were rapidly buried, possibly in a quick landslide type event on the seafloor and preserved through time. Burgess Shale is in Canada, and we're finding more and more of these types of fossils in China as well. And what is this? This is a fossil. It's not a bone. It's not a shell. It's not a hard part. It's not a petrified tree or anything. It's evidence that an animal lived, ate, and excreted here. This is what we call a coprolite, or fossilized, in this case, dinosaur dung. So scientists, geologists have found these useful to dissect and cut into to see what animals ate. Bones, small bones, etc., are preserved in these types of fossils. So they can be useful too, fossilized dung.